Let us turn our Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 30. 1 Samuel chapter 30. Now we have heard the account read about David and his men recovering all. Look at chapter 30. Look at chapter 30 in verse 20. And David took all the flocks and herds which they drave before those other cattle and said, "This is David's spoil." David recovered all. We saw in the previous weeks. Everything that was taken from them, they recovered. And more, and more. Everything that the Amalekites took from other parts of the land, they also gained that. Now all this can apparently look like David's hard labor and the people supporting David courageously to go fight this battle. They were tired. 200 of the men were so tired, they were too weak to move on. So when you see such a scene, you would naturally contribute it to, well, the hard labor, the courage and of David and his men, even risking their lives to go and recover the families and the possessions that the Amalekites has taken away from them. Now, is it David's and his people's labor that obtained all this, recovered everything and more? Was it that? Now look at how David puts it. Look at verse 23. Now see, the people, they did not want to share this recovery of goods. Look at verse 23. Then said David, "Ye shall not do so, my brethren, with that which the Lord hath given us." Now David was very clear in his mind. Despite he being the one who led the people, despite he being the one who showed the courage and stirred others to go, despite he being the one who took the lead. But David was very clear. Look at verse 23. That which, the things that they recovered and more, that which what did David recovered? No, he says the Lord hath given. Given. It is God that gave these things to us. Now, Christians, whenever we have anything in our hands, our natural tendency is to think, well, it's my education, it's my diligence, my cleverness, my intelligence, my zeal, my hard work that got all these things in my life. Learn to be like David. The truth is this: it is God. Despite whatever you have done, even if you have reached your life like David and at a point of exhaustion and still went ahead to do something and you had gain, you still must recognize this fact. It is the Lord that hath given. Those things are given by God. This is something that I feel we must be constantly very conscious of, in the forefront of our minds. Parents, students, even elderlies, you've amassed many things in your young days, and now you have much. What must be on our lips? That is in our heart. The Lord gave these things. Doesn't matter how much strength you put into these things, the Lord gave these things. Now we want to learn three things, God willing, today. The first is what I've just mentioned. We must recognize the fact that the Lord is giver of all things. We must recognize very clearly, very sincerely, not just say, but it's a reality to us that the Lord is the giver of all things. That's the first thing we want to learn, and then we also want to learn. Now, if that being the case, then now how must we use these things? And finally, what we must ensure that we are not what we must not be. All right, 3 things. Now let's begin with, we must recognize the fact that the Lord is the giver of all things. Now, to make this real to us, because we say this all the time, the Lord is giver of all things. But I fear that some of us are not fully convinced. We know we need to say that. It's the right theological thing to say. But what is really in our heart? Why must we really believe that? Why did David truly believe this? Because he was the one, almost at the verge of being stoned by the people, had to convince the people to go with him, risk his life. But yet he was so clear. Why can he be so clear that it is the Lord that giveth all things? Well, learn this. There are 2 key principles that must grip our hearts. Then we will really believe it is the Lord that giveth all things. Look at verse 23. Ye shall not do so, my brethren, with that which the Lord hath given us. So he understands it's the Lord that gave. But why? Look at these 2 things. Who hath preserved us, number 1, and have delivered the company that came against us into our hands, number 2. These 2 reasons made David so clear. Truly it is the Lord that gives, that has given. Now follow the word of God on this. The Lord, look at verse 23, who hath preserved us. He's talking about their lives. Their lives. If God did not preserve our lives in this battle, no. Even before that, David was almost going to fight Israel. Right? Now, if he did, there is a high potential that God says, then David is the end of your life. Right? They will escape that. And in this very battle, they were tired, they were weak, they were outnumbered. But yet, they did not die. Now, if God did not preserve their lives in the first place, what is there to talk about obtaining anything? What is there to talk about at all if they did not have the life to go back with these things? Now, one of the things that Christians, even Christians, I know unbelievers say this very often to their Christian children. You know who gave you an education? You know, when you work, you are the one that made money. Why do you say that it is God that gave you these things? Sometimes when children use what they have for the Lord, they get this from parents, and even Christian parents. Now, until you yourself really believe that it is God preserving your life that enabled you to have intelligence. Now, God can just cause a little thing or withhold His mercy in preserving just a little cell in your body. That cell can mutate. That cell can spread. That cell can cause all sorts of havoc in your body, cancer, that can spread very fast to your brain. And then your brain will not be able to function. Just a little cell that God does not intervene to keep it in its place, in its structure. Don't even talk about having the intelligence to work. Don't even talk about having the health to go to work. Don't even talk about having the health to eat something, to have strength. Now, I remember when I had the onset of cancer. I can understand this very well. Just to eat a spoon full of porridge was like a humongous task. I cannot swallow. Just when I swallowed that, I have to walk. Just keep walking for 5 to 10 minutes just to try to get it to go down before I can take another spoonful of porridge. I lost, I think, more than 10 kilograms in just a couple of weeks. Then it became so clear. Without health, No matter what you think, whatever education you have, whatever position you have at work, whatever abilities you have to accomplish great things and make a lot of money, has no meaning. It's impossible. God preserved us. Now, until you are so clear in your heart, you may not be able to help your unbelieving parents understand that, but in your heart you must truly believe that. If God did not give my parents health, if God did not preserve their health, and God did not preserve my health, my life, what is there to talk about in terms of achieving and having anything that as if it came from me? So that is the first thing that David had very clear in his mind, in his heart. The second thing, all right? Look at verse 23. And delivered us, the company that came against us, into our hand. Now, what did David also understand? Now he acknowledged, he recognized very clearly, it is God that gave victory. You can have health, you can have lots of strength, but unless God gives the victory, unless God gives the success, you will fail. David was very clear about this second fact. Now, sometimes we can think, well, it is my intelligence, my capability, my hard work that brought this success, that brought this gain and increase, that brought this promotion. Somewhere in our heart, we feel that. But we will say, well, it is the Lord that gives. Truly, do we say that? Do not take the name of the Lord in vain. We can say all these things. It's the Lord that gives. But deep in our hearts, we share this to show off. You see, actually, I'm rich, I'm successful, I can live and have these things. Actually, it's because of my intelligence. But we will say the Lord that giveth, right? It is to brag. But deep inside, we do not really, like David, have this serious, sincere belief, conviction that this victory that they experienced was truly simply because God delivered. It's like a gift. God says, nah, here, victory. He was so clear about that. Are you so clear about that? When you have successes, when you have gains, when you have promotions, when you have praise, when your position, is this very real in your heart? These are the two facts, realities, that must grip us so strongly that when we say it is the Lord that gives, in order to be really meaning those words. Now, sometimes we think it is our clever ideas, our cleverness, our intelligence, our abilities that get us paid every week, every month at work. Think again. Be very honest about that. Students, you think that you got your grades, you think that you keep getting promoted, or it's just your normal labor at home. God can make you fall sick. God can take away your memory, and everything will collapse. Now, I shared this many times. There was an unbeliever who had a son, extremely intelligent, extremely capable in sports. These two combinations made the father so proud. But the father brought this son into an illness that is so rare. He became incapacitated like a vegetable in a wheelchair. The father was always very proud. Then finally he came to this realization. It is true. It is not because I beget a clever son. It's not because my son is clever. It's purely the mercies of the living God. And he turned to Christ. Christian, until these things are real in our lives, we will not be honest. We will not be sincere. And when the crunch comes, we'll see later on, we will use these things not according to this realization that it is the Lord that gave. All right, we'll see that. So what does God give? Number one, success in this case, for example. What does God give? Time. Time. They needed to have that time to pursue. And the timing was perfect. We saw that. They fought for X number of days. All these are not, random. Christian time is given by God. We must not kill time, all right? We must use time. Wisdom. Well, about time. You know, how God timed everything such that they would be timely in certain things, that they will have the time to do certain things, that is perfectly needed, was all arranged by God. When you have time, you can't say this is extra time. No, it's a time that God gives for a purpose. God timed for a purpose. God provided for a purpose. Then God gave wisdom. Wisdom. God gave them the wisdom to know how to do battle. God gave, of course, abilities and skills to fight. They needed to do these things in order to have the victory. But all this, David was clear it is from God, and that's why we have these things. It's given by God. Though we were the ones who did it, but it's given by God because God gave these things. Achievements, promotions. Promotion comes not from the east or from the west, but from God. When God gives us a job, when God gives us salary, when God gives us additional salary, when God gives us bonuses, when God gives us more time in school, at work, at home. Now all these are given by God. I think there is a verse that well describes this. Let's turn to Deuteronomy 8:18, please. Deuteronomy 8:18. This passage epitomizes the ability to acquire wealth is truly from God. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. Let me read to you. But, Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, but thou shalt remember the Lord thy God. See, remember. Why must you remember? Why must you acknowledge? For the reason, it is he that giveth the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers unto this day. It is God that giveth you the power to get wealth. So this wealth that David now has gotten is given to him because of the power that God gave him. All right? Now, how do we feel when we see the money that we have, the possessions that we have, the abilities, the time? How do we see all these things now? Do you really acknowledge that it is from God? I leave that with you in the first point. Until these two things, that it is God that preserves your life, that it is God, even when you have life and health and abilities, it is God that gave you success. You will never say, it is the Lord that gives, with genuine, deep, convicted honesty. And then it leads to the second point. You will not use it correctly because it's not a genuine conviction. Your time, your resources, your money, your promotions, you will not use it correctly. But because David was so clear that it is God that gives because of these two reasons, now he would use it correctly. He would use these resources correctly. Let's learn from David. All right? 4 things. The first, when God gives, look at verse 23, that which the Lord hath given us. When God gives, the first thing to remember, like David, is this: we are then stewards. We are then stewards of what God gives. Look at verse 20. Now, David said, this is David's spoil. When you first read it, wow, David, how can you say that? This is God's spoil, right? How can you say it's David's spoil? Young ones, spoil is not rotten things and spoiled things, right? Rotten food and spoiled devices. Now, spoils of battle means in their victory, they have all these things that belong to the enemies or taken by the enemies, the things, all right? The treasures and so on, the spoils. How can David say it's David's spoils? Now, by David's words, and not just words, by David's words and actions, you began to understand what David meant when he said, this is David's spoil. What he meant is, now, these things are now my responsibilities. These things which the Lord have given are my responsibilities for God. David understood that when God says, I give you power to get wealth, for what? That he may establish his covenant. It's never, when God gave you power to get wealth, it's never for your sake. It's to establish the covenant. That is why God gave. What is a covenant? Agreement between parties, number one. It is then there is a purpose to be fulfilled. And there are privileges and penalties. David understood all this. When God gives power to get wealth, it is to fulfill covenantal purposes. And now these things are my responsibilities when God has given. Now how do we know that it is about stewardship? What did David do with all this? Verses 26 to 31 that has been read to us show us very clearly. And David came to Ziklag, and he sent spoil unto the elders of Judah and unto his friends, saying, behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. And then a whole long list of various places he sent the money to. He was not going to hoard it for himself. Whoa, I got this, and it's David's spoil. I am going to now keep them and enjoy. No, he was a steward of them. He knew that in these places, the elders, they were serving God. They were living for God, taking care of Israel. So he sent this to the elders. Here are gifts from the Lord for you to use for Israel, to use for God's kingdom. David did not think, wow, I have this. How can I now grow more of this? Maybe I can use this to make more money now. No. So the first thing we must realize when God gives, this is now my responsibility to execute it for God's use, for God's kingdom. Your time, your extra time, your money, your bonuses, how do you view them, dear believers? Do you see them as, wow, these are increases for me? No, not David. Do you say this is my spoil and then use it for yourself? Learn from David. Now, when we really have to ask ourselves the test of when we say these things are given by God, the test is how you use it. Given by God means it belongs to God. When the Christians say given by God, you must never think God gave me this for my own pleasure. Unless the pleasure is to please God, right? Whenever the Christians say this is given by God, it is always to fulfill the covenantal purpose. Always. So what you mean is this is now to be my responsibility to execute all this and to use all this responsibly for God. David did not see it as an opportunity to enrich himself, to increase for himself. You think about this. The people told him, don't give to these 200 men. You know what that means? It means that if David don't do that, he can increase his own share by 1/3, right? 200 of 600 men. He can increase his own share. Did David say, no, I will use it to increase my own share? No, he did not. Now, these people, they stayed back. They stayed back. All right? For what? Now, look at verse 24. Why did David say, no, we cannot do this? So shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff. They shall part alike. Tarrieth by the stuff. What does it mean? They stayed back. They looked after our things. They looked after our things. They played a role, right? Now, David did not use all this as an opportunity to increase his personal wealth. Because it's simply stewardship. Whenever you get a promotion, bonus, how do you view them? Wow, windfall. Suddenly the company gives you a big increment or a bonus. This is a windfall for me, and therefore it's for me to use for myself. I have more time now to do what I like to do, my hobbies, my recreation, my sleep. Or is it more time to do what I have always wanted to do for the Lord, but had no time? Students, holidays is not a bonus windfall. It is time given by God. Adults likewise, in whatever situation. When you have increases, do you view yourself as this is my responsibility, like David? Or do you view it as, now, what shall I buy with this bonus, with this pay increment? What better holidays can I have now? In the past, I have to stinge. I can't even go for holidays. Now I can start having holidays. Or you've been having holidays. Now I can have more expensive holidays. Do you look at these things as a steward? This is my responsibility. Or do you look at them, now what can I now with more money? What can I eat more? Things that I never could afford. What can I eat now? What places can I dine in now? What lifestyle can I change? Are you stewards? When you say, this is what the Lord has given, what nicer things I can buy in life with this increase in money? For myself, for my children, doll them up. What nicer car can I upgrade to? What nicer home can I move to? What nicer clothes can I buy? What more exotic holidays and dining experiences can I have? Is that stewardship? When you say when the Lord gives, it's not, now what can I do? What can I use this for myself? It is always to forward God's work. He saw these Israelites, right? Maybe recently they've been attacked by the Philistines or by other nations. Give them so that they will have the resources to forward God's work. Right, so first thing, not to enrich yourself and to use these things for yourself. In the New Testament, we have the key principle. The Lord freely gives. We have received freely. Now freely use it for the Lord's work. Not hoard it for yourself. No, use it to enrich yourself. All right, so that is the first thing. Now, for example, usage. Do you look at those poorer ones? Like these people. Well, they're the weaker ones, right? Why should I give them what I work so hard for? When you see the poorer ones in church that cannot afford church camp, that cannot afford to take FEBC courses, what immediately comes to your mind with money that you have? You think, how can I help them, right? Or say, well, they are poor. These people did not go not because they did not want to. They could not. They really physically were incapable, right? I'm not promoting people who are lazy and then we give them money. The spirit was willing, but they just cannot. Do you feel that, well, I got a car. If I use it for transport ministry, I will rack up my mileage. If I want to sell it later, mileage is so high. I will run down my parts in the car, and then I have to do more servicing more frequently. Do you see yourself as, this is my car? When you say that, what do you mean? This is my car, and I must be responsible on how to use it for the Lord. Or if I use my car, I must spend more fuel. When I can use that savings to buy a better meal for myself, buy nicer clothes for myself, have nicer things, nicer holidays for myself. Why should I want to use that? When David said, this is David's spoil, he said, now David must be very careful and David must use this for God's purposes. And you saw how he did it. He really not just said it, but he did it. That's the test, Christians. Now the second principle of how to use this money. All right? Not so first, not to enrich ourselves, not for our own pleasure, not to look at these things as mine, but for the Lord's work, for covenantal purposes. Now the second thing is, look at the people. Look at verse 22. Then answered all the wicked men and the men of Belial, of those that went with David, and said, because they went not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil that we have recovered, save to every man his wife and his children, and that they may lead them away and depart. Now the second principle that we must abide by, and we must be very careful when we say the Lord give, then is this: you must not use things as dictated by others. These people said, no, David, with these things, David, this is what we should do. Now, when we have increase, there will be people in our lives that will want to tell us, or the world itself, constantly bombard you with advertisements on how to spend your money. They want a big share of that, right? Others will tell you how you should use the increase, the promotion, the extra time, extra money, extra resources, your abilities. The world will tell you how to use it. David did not succumb to them. David did not listen to them. He abided by the principles, the biblical principles. Don't let the world tell you. Don't succumb to it. Think very clearly, what are the biblical principles for me to be the right steward? Don't just blindly follow the world. Now, David followed the principle that Abraham set in the Old Testament in Genesis 14. Now, Abraham, when he went to recover his people, and then he had the victory. Now, he said this, that I will not take a thread, even to a shoe latchet, that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou should say, I have made Abraham rich. Those things that he recovered did not belong to him. He made sure he said, please, I don't want it. Now, these people were wicked. Why? They went to recover things. And the things that were taken, some of them belonged to these 200 people that had to stay behind. They recovered it. They wanted to enrich themselves. The world will tell you this. You know, you work so hard for it. You work so hard for this promotion. You work so hard for this increment. You work so hard. These are yours. You should use them to make more increase. You should use them to get a better promotion next. You should spend your time, your energy on those things. That is what the world will tell you. See, they wanted to increase their own wealth. The wickedness was this. Let them have their children and their wives. Sounds very good, right? Sounds very kind. You know what it means? We don't have to spend the extra 1/3 that we gain on these people. We have to look up, feed their wives, feed their children. Let them have those trouble and send them away with nothing. So that 1/3, that additional 1/3 that I get, do not need to be spent on taking care of them. Do you know why they're wicked? God calls them wicked because of that. To enrich self, find more ways to make yourself richer. That is how the world will tell you. You get a promotion, and then they will fan you. You see, you work hard, you get promotion, right? Now you work harder. Don't use the time to serve God. Don't use the extra money. You know, you make more money, right? Invest more of that to make more money. That's how the world will constantly whisper to you. You know, now you have more time, right? Use more time to study, to get even better grades. When God said, I gave you time, I made you intelligent, I made you clever, I made you be able to finish your work faster. Well, now I have more time. If I spend more time, then I can get even better grades, right? Now I have more money. If I invest, if I spend my time thinking how I can make more money, I can get more money, right? If I don't care about others, don't help others, don't use my resources to be in transport ministry or whatever it is, or building fund, right? If I don't return to the Lord, I have more money to make more interest in the bank. The world constantly makes us think like that. So when you say the Lord gives, then you live by the principles of God. Now, when you think about your time, your abilities, and all that, there is always that temptation to use it to make more. Now, imagine if you were promoted, and then you have a bigger salary, and then you spend more time networking, spend more time pleasing the bosses, spend more time being part of many things. You say, that is how I get the next promotion, right? You see, all these things are how we think. I thank God for people who are very clear about that. No, yes, I got this promotion. I only want this because the Lord has given it. That is all. You want me to spend more time with in all these things? No, I've got important things to do for God. Don't succumb to the whispers of the world. Now, sometimes we can have this idea, right? Why give to the church? They do nothing. They just sit around. I'm the one who's out there risking my neck, right? Working so hard. Why? Why not? Why? Right? These people had a part to play. They were able to go forth to do all these things because these people were protecting their goods as well. Really think about this. Look at verse 17. Now, say 400 young men which rode upon camels and fled. 400 escaped. 400 escaped. 200 stayed back. These 200 of David's men stayed back. These 400 men could go in the direction of these 200 men. These 200 men were really very weak at this time. These 400 men, double the people, could easily say, well, they took ours, now we have a chance to take back some at least. They stay back to look after the things. Now, what I'm trying to say is this. We must not have the attitude that, well, there are weaker ones, they are useless. They fulfilled a purpose. Always remember that. Now then, the third one, right? The third principle, when we say it is God that gives, make sure that this principle is real in your life. Look at verse 23. Then David, verse 22. Answer all the wicked men and men of Belial. Now, these wicked men and men of Belial, they would likely have been the very ones that wanted to stone David to death, right? I think we can safely assume that. That is why there are people like that. What did David say in verse 23? Ye shall not do so. Verse 24, for who will hearken unto you in this matter? Now, David did not fear what others expect, even may threaten him about how he would responsibly steward what God has given. David did not fear. David did not try to please. You see, not only we should not, in the second principle, we should not follow the ways of the world. We must not fear as well when the world or people in our lives seem to pressure us, threaten us. You don't follow their ways, but you can fear and give in. David did not. David said, ye shall not do so. When David said, these are David's spoil, what he meant is, I will defend how I will use what God gave to me to steward for him. I will defend it. I will not fear. These were wicked men, sons of Belial, right? Who will hearken unto you, verse 24, in this matter? I will not let anyone listen to you. Now let's start with pleasing men. David could fear. When we fear, we want to please. Remember that, all right? When we fear, we want to please. David would know that David alone, humanly speaking, would not be able to win this battle. These people, they did go fight with him. They did support him. You can feel, it is my parents that put me through education. It is my parents that work hard. It's my parents that enabled me to finish education, expensive in Australia, and now I have a job. And then they will tell me, don't give tithe and offerings. They will threaten you. And then you feel, but actually it's my parents, right? Unless you remember the two principles, you will succumb. Because you say, in your heart, you will still tremble and say, yeah, actually it's my parents. Which is why I said you must have those two principles genuine convictions in your heart. You look beyond your parents. You look beyond some benefactor in your life. Yes, you are grateful to them. Look at David, verse 31. David himself and his men were want to hunt. He was grateful. Those people that helped him, he was grateful. But he was very clear that if anyone tries to pressurize him, anyone threatens him in how he used the money, he will not succumb. Your parents will tell you, why do you spend your time like that serving God in church? Why do you spend your money? Why do you spend your energy, your abilities? You don't use all this for church. You can do so much better, And then you want to please them. And then they get angry when you do. And then now you fear. David can easily fear again. But David did not. These people were upset from the tone. Yes, those in your life who does not want you to spend your time, your energy, your resources, your unbelieving relatives or parents. Why, as a student, why are you spending time going to church? Why are you spending time reading the Bible? Why? What are you going to feel? I fear. Yeah, it's my parents that support me through school, right? I should be grateful to them. Now, let us always know this. Being a steward also has its crosses. They will pressurize you and they will make you feel bad. If you don't tithe, you can give me more money, right? And so on and so forth. If you don't tithe, you can buy better things, You can pay off your loan faster, If you don't spend your time doing this, you can spend more time with me, right? And so on. So people can get upset at you. What are you going to do? Follow David or follow your fears? Will you scale back? Maybe I should scale back in my offerings, in my tithes. Scale back in my time. Maybe I should scale back and please these people, my parents, my benefactors. Maybe I should, as a married person, listen to my parents when they scold me. Why waste your education to be a homekeeper? I'm the one who, you think I work so hard, daughter? You see, now my health is bad because I work so hard for you. Now you want to be a homemaker? Your heart will move. Unless you go beyond all this and see the two principles, right? I kept emphasizing that. When your parents began to make you feel it's a waste of time on Sundays if you don't study, how would you feel? It's a waste of your talent if you don't go and participate in this concert and that concert and play this kind of music. How would you feel? What about your friends pressurizing you? Now, remember when we learned about total abstinence, right? Some elderly struggle. You say, Pastor, this XO, it's a very old bottle and it costs a lot of money, costed a lot of money. And now it will it's worth even more money, right? You mean I just use it for cooking because the alcohol evaporates, right? You mean I should pour it away if I don't use it for cooking? Now the idea that I will be wasting what I've invested in, wasting money, wasting what I've already have in my life if I don't use it, is wasted. You see, all these things will be what your parents will tell you, or what your heart will begin to feel and fear, right? Now I have to move. Then the fourth principle. Before that, before moving to the fourth, all right? Now, parents, how would you feel? God gives. The child in your life is given by God. That they have health to study, eat, perform any activity is from God. That God gave them success is from God. Then therefore they must use those things for God. And if they need to give up certain things according to God's principle, they need to give it up. Are you going to pressure them? Parents, be very honest. You constantly say, oh, everything is from God. Oh, my child is so smart. It's from God, it's from God, it's from God. But behind, you tell them, don't do this, don't do that. Spend more time in studies, spend more time for yourself, spend more time to get promotion. Don't spend so much time for God. Are you like that? What if one day your child wants to go to the full-time ministry? He's called, not wants to go, or he's called to the full-time ministry. Wasted, all these abilities and education and position. Wasted to be a homekeeper, right? I've mentioned that. Parents, God gave you all this. Be a steward. Be honest about what you mean. The fourth principle, look at David, verse 26. Now he says, behold, a present for you of David. No, present a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. Not his private collection. This is what God gave. They were enemies of God. God gave the victory. This is from the Lord. Now this word present has the idea of blessing from God. All right, so don't just take it as personal present. In Hebrew, it means a blessing from God. So when David said that, they understood. This is a blessing from God. In other words, the principle is don't steal glory from God. When you say God gave, it is God that giveth. It is God that preserveth. It is God that gave us success. Do not steal glory from God. Do not share. Do not say things in a way that steals glory from God. When David says this, David could say, my successes. David truly meant it is from God. By his generosity, by sincerity, do not steal glory from God, parents. It's a dangerous thing. God will not share his glory with anyone. People who are very, very, they steal the glory from God about their children, about their own achievements, their singles, achievements in life. Now, inevitably will fall flat on their faces. God will not share his glory. Don't be so foolish. Learn to be humble like David. David not only genuinely was a good steward, was not selfish. No, David was genuinely someone who wanted people to know it is God that giveth, this is from God. When you give something to someone, don't try to do it in a way that people will know it is you. Right? When you give love gifts, just drop it into the offering bag. Yes, sometimes you may need to find out certain information to give wisely, correctly. You may need to ask certain session members. But otherwise, don't do it in a way where, the session will know, right? Don't do it that way. The heart is very deceitful. We know that. You may have partly sincere motives, but there is the other part that will always fight to want to have some glory. All right? Remember that. So 4 principles that we learn from David here. And then in closing, what we must never be. Look at verse 22. Then answered all the wicked men and men of Belial. Christians, when you are not wanting to be a genuine steward of God, when you have increased and you want to enrich yourself and use it for yourself, when you are someone who would, take advantage of others for your own increase, when you're someone who are afraid and you want to please men or please your flesh, please understand what God calls us. Wicked. Wicked. And sons of Belial. Useless. Useless. Wicked. Sons of Belial, sons of useless people. Parents, are you begetting useless children? By how you live and how you see gains in your life? You will beget useless children as well. Sons of Belial. Now, how you spend what God gives responsibly as a steward, not fearing men, not following the ways of the world, not stealing his glory, will define what God thinks of you now. Is God thinking of you as someone who's wicked and useless? Why wicked? I've mentioned they don't care about their other brethren. Finders keepers. I did not go there to restore things for you. Selfish. These are for me. I enrich myself by it. If there's any way I can keep more for myself and give less to you, I will do it. Why do I use my things for you, for the church? Wicked. Why useless? Useless for God. Useless for God. When we meet God, we want to hear, thou good, not wicked. Thou faithful, not useless servant. Wicked is the opposite of good. Faithful, useless is the opposite of faithful. What do you want to hear? Is it worth some nicer holidays? Is it worth people saying, wow, you are so well-traveled, you are so well-dressed, you live in such a nice house, you have such nice things, wow, your holidays are so exotic. Is it worth hearing those words, enjoying those temporary pleasures? And then for eternity, you lose this commendation that you know you have not disappointed the living God who put these things in your hand. Is it worth for eternity? That short pleasure on earth. Yes, me and my children had nicer holidays. Or they had many ECAs that make them so capable now. And then compared to other children, wow, they're so advanced in so many things, in possessions and abilities and so on. Is it worth it? I'm not saying these things by themselves are evil. But if that is how you steward God's money for yourself, God says we are wicked and useless. Good for nothing. Yeah, so a little more for myself, have nicer things, nicer clothes, nicer holidays, nicer food, luxuries, nicer little trinkets and all that for the ladies. Is it worth it? And last but not least, I appeal to those who have heard the gospel many times. The Bible tells us, is it worth it if you gain the whole world? The whole world. Literally. Richer than the richest person on earth many times over for your whole life, but lose your own soul. The whole point is about eternity. The whole point about when God has given, and David said, this is David's spoil, is about eternity. How he used it on earth and your life to be forever in hell for that momentary pleasure on earth. Is it worth it? You know the answer. Let us rise to sing the closing hymn, 411. Shall we rise? 411.